My name is Anya J. Jala. I'm a wife, a mother, healthcare professional, author of My Journey to Victory. I am the founder of Restoration Wing. It is a ministry whose mission is to comfort, heal, empower, and bring restoration to the hopeless through the love of God. Our vision is to be a voice to the voiceless, for people to understand the depth of God's love in any situation and to rise to become all that God has created them to be. Our values are based on biblical principles, and I will want to share with you my story. Restoration Wing was born out of my life's experiences and my journey. I was born and I grew up early part of my years in Nigeria. I was born to two lovely parents. Things went the way they weren't supposed to go, and when I turned 13, my parents got a divorce. For a 13-year-old, that was very devastating. I was just about becoming a teenager, and with all the changes that went with that, it was not a good time for me. From then on, I started planning my way out of home. And when I turned 21, I decided to get married because I thought that was going to be my gateway out of the house. So I got married to the first man that I met. Life was great. Life was good. Being 21 and married, everyone was looking up to me, and I thought, yes, I had arrived. But not long after that, my husband died and left me with a child, a little girl to take care of. I became a widow at a very young age. I had to go through the cultural practices in our West African culture. They shaved my hair. They put on me grieving cloth. I had to sit in the house for 6 months. I was not really communicating with people. It was a terrible time for me. I became depressed and suicidal. I wanted to take my own life. I had nothing. I had nowhere to go to. I had no one to fight for me. It was a very terrible experience. I could not inherit anything from my husband, so I was sent right back home to my father's house. And this went on and on and on. And over the years, I felt like life was not worth living for. At the point where I came and I decided that I was going to take my own life, God helped me because then I met someone who was higher than me in the person of Jesus. And through that relationship, transformation started. I began my journey to victory. I had to make some serious decisions, and I took very strategic steps that no one can take for you. You have to make that decision to take your life back. And I started searching the Bible and looking up topics on grief and sorrow, healing, and gradually hope started to rise. And the desire to take my life was gone. I decided I wanted to live and not die. I changed my environment. It was a process. It did take time, and with the help of, men and women, good men and women that came around me, that helped my journey even faster. Today, I can tell you confidently that I'm healed in my emotions and I have remarried and helping others in my situation regain their life back. I know that not everyone will choose to remarry after a death of a spouse, but the goal is to overcome grief, unhealthy grief that can steal your very existence. So today, I will be talking to you about healing from grief. Today, I'm going to also be talking to you about the challenges that I faced going through widowhood. Grief in itself is a process. It is a process of healing. Our experiences may be different. Like I said earlier, our stories may be different, but a loss is a loss. Grief is grief. And no matter where you find yourself in life, the emotions are real. Those emotions hurt. They are raw as the very air that you breathe. Okay? Grief in itself is a multifaceted response to loss, particularly in the loss of someone or something that has died. It is a bond that you formed. It was not just something that you do. You formed a bond with this person. It's a soul tie. Both of you become one. So that affection right there that was formed is real. Although conventionally focused on the emotional response to loss, it also has its physical, cognitive, behavioral, social, cultural, spiritual, and philosophical dimensions to it. Grief can also be experienced by those going through a divorce, a child that has chosen to choose his or her own distinctive path, and much more. I know a lot of people who grieve because they turn 40. They're grieving their youth. I know people who grieve a loss of a job, retirement, divorce. There's so many things that people grieve about. They grieve because, they're relocated. They grieve over the loss of friends and their social life and just different things that people grieve about. But today, in this context, we're talking about grief in relation to a loss of a spouse. So, how do people grieve and how do grief affect people? Grief can affect you differently depending on your orientation to life, your perspective at life. Sometimes grief can also affect you based on how long that relationship had been, your support system, and all of that. So, grieving in itself is not a bad thing, but unhealthy grief can make you depressed. It makes you look closer at your own mortality. It increases stress, anxiety, feelings of anger, insomnia, loss of appetite. But for some people, they eat too much, while others lose weight. A lot of people gain weight with grief. So, when you look at this picture, you ask yourself, how does this affect me? I always tell people that for you to heal from something, you have to switch something. It's like you being in the kitchen and you're trying to cut something with a knife that is blunt. It's impossible to use a blunt knife to cut anything. So what do? You switch it out and pick something that is sharper, and then you cut. So what you're going to do here is to switch out or exchange that spirit of heaviness for a spirit of gladness, that spirit of sadness for a spirit of joy. You're going to have to switch the anger and switch the pain and pick up a different tool that's going to help you succeed in life. Is this going to be easy? Not really. Is it possible? Absolutely. It is a step by step process that you're willing to make. There are times when you're not going to want to wake up in the morning, but you have to rise up. You have to get up and say, today is going to be a good day. I'm going to live this life. So you're doing this on purpose, and no one's going to do this for you. You're also going to have to ask God to help you because you cannot do this in your own power. I had to do that for myself. I had to rely on God to help me and ask for his help. Healing from grief is a process like we talked about before. You have to be willing to go through that process. You have to start by changing the thoughts that once caused you pain to positive thoughts or memories of that loved one. I know a lot of you have different, how would I call it? I wouldn't say practices, but people have different cultures or things they do during the holidays that bring them good memories. And the holidays are the most difficult times for a lot of folks. They keep remembering what they did together, and then now there's a hole during the holidays. What I try to tell people, you know, I said, find a different tradition. Find something different to replace. You're not going to forget your loved one, but now you're trying to turn that energy into a positive one. You replace your traditions and find something different to do. Hang out with friends or families, or do something else with your children if they're still at home. And if they have left home, find a different tradition to replace what you used to do. And that would help to alleviate some of that emptiness or that pain that you feel. You volunteer in your community. You can go back to school if it's something that you like. You can learn a new skill. You can take a class. People always tell me, oh, you can do this, you can do that. Most of the things that you see me doing now are the things that I learned and things that I did when I was going through my grieving process. I took a sewing class, and I learned how to make soap. I learned how to, because I loved to work with my hands. So that was what I did to help my mind. I didn't want to sit down idle. I did so many things. And, going back to school, it doesn't matter. Pick something, one thing that you love to do. Maybe crafting, it could be reading, going to the library, just doing something that would help you. It's not a distraction per se, but it's more like taking something positive and switching it out for that energy that drains you on a daily basis, that want to keep you at home and just crying all day and never doing anything. Okay, you want to just accept and embrace the situation. Be willing to make the change. That your loved one is gone, yes, you have to accept it. That friend is gone, yes. The divorce happened, yes. And the moment you accept your new reality, you begin to ask yourself, what can I do to change the situation? I'll advise you to find your support groups. Find your accountability partner. Women or men, it does not matter. Preferably, you don't want to find an opposite sex if you're a woman or a man, because you're at your most vulnerable time. Sometimes we feel like, oh, I can handle it. But when those emotions kick in, before you know it, you're in his bed. And then, oops, I did it again. That doesn't fix it. You're just putting on band-aid upon band-aid. It never works. And then you're grieving even more, and then you're more at a loss. So I would say, please do not find your accountability partner of the opposite sex. One thing that I'm going to tell you, that a lot of these things that I'm talking to you about today are things that I have done, things that I've tried, and things that work. I will never tell you anything that will not yield results, because I will not give you anything that I have not tried. Okay? Give all this time to work. It is with consistency and doing something over and over again that you will see the results. Don't just try it one day and dump it and say this is not working. And the enemy will come in and pressure you and press you and make you want to give up. Don't do it. You take one day at a time and tell yourself, I'm worth fighting for. I'm worth living for. I looked at my daughter at the time, and I looked at her and I said, she's worth living for. She's worth fighting for. And gradually you begin to rise up. Change your environment. Leave people who constantly want to make you feel guilty. I call people some grief police. They look at you and they say, oh, you moved on already. You're enjoying your life. That guilt trip. You don't want to be around people who put guilt on you. Always remember this. Yes, you did lose a spouse, you lost a loved one, but you're still alive. It's for a reason that you're still alive today. It's for a reason that God kept you alive today. You're not a mistake. You're not an accident. Your life is not a series of web just randomly happening. God has a purpose. That's why you're here. Ask yourself this question. Am I alive to the people who are still here with me, or am I dead to them? How is my depression or how is my grieving affecting the people around me? Has it pushed people away from me or drawn people closer to me? Just the energy that you carry around you can repel or attract people to you. And when you decide that you want to live again and move on, there is something that will draw people to you or repel them away from you. So you want to see yourself and say, hey, the breath of life that I have today is a gift from God. If you were not supposed to be here, you would have been dead. But if you're alive, then it's a privilege that you're alive, and you have to talk to yourself that, you know what, I will be accountable, to God for giving me this breath of life, and not sit down and allow myself to die slowly, Because when you are depressed, when you are grieving unhealthily, when you've locked yourself up for years and years and years, I call it the living dead syndrome. Yes, that's what I call it, because you're living, but you're not alive. You're just walking dead. Someone will ask me, okay, how about people who are not Christians? How do you talk to them about, overcoming grief and, dealing with all this? Because I hear you talking about, I did this, God did this, and scriptures and the Bible. And listen, I love you enough to tell you what I did. And I know a lot of people have chosen to go to grief counseling, to go to, psychotherapists and psychoanalysts. And, some people have gone to, what they call them, like stargazers or card readers. I know someone who actually consults. I'm not particularly sure the name of what it is, but what they do is they try to connect with their loved ones while they're dead. The desire to want to see them one more time, the desire to say, oh, I want to tell them I love you one more time. I just want to make sure that they're okay. And, they conjure up all these familiar spirits and communicate with them. But then they go one time, and then it's another time, and then it's another time. And the deception and the circle continues. Personally, I will not make those choices, but I'm not here to condemn you. I'm here to shed light on the things that people are doing that most times are not effective. Am I against grief counseling? Absolutely not. But you don't want to put a Band-Aid on a wound without trying to let that wound heal, and ask yourself the questions. What happened? How did I get here? When you begin to answer those questions, your healing process has started. If you take a pill to reduce your anxiety and reduce your depression or panic attacks and what have you, when those pills weighs off in 12 hours, you're right back to where you started. But now again, like I said, you have to make your choices. I made mine, and I'm giving you what worked for me. So, moving on. The Bible tells me that Jesus Christ bore our infirmity. He took on our grief. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we were healed. That's in the book of Isaiah. When I looked at that, it ministers to me because healing in this context is holistic. Jesus is concerned, and God is concerned about us healing holistically, the physical, our emotions, all of that, spirit, soul, and body. He took upon our grief. The Bible says, the chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we were healed 2,000 years ago. So personally, I had to take it upon myself. I had to open my mouth and I had to speak it to myself. That by the stripes of Jesus, I'm healed from my emotions. I'm healed from the hurt. I'm healed from grief. I'm healed from the pain. And then I also had to learn to forgive from the hurt and those that took advantage of me, and everything that happened during the widowhood practices that I had to go through, the trauma. I had to open my mouth, and daily I had to let that go. And gradually, life began to spring up. Yes, that was what I did. It did take time, but it does work. Allow God's word to transform you by daily searching, reading, meditating on those thoughts and those words that are true to your situation. The Bible tells us that words that are pure, words that are good report, that's what you need to meditate upon. And God's ultimate plan for us is to receive healing, is to be whole and to be restored. God never took your loved one. I know I've heard a lot of things where people will put on social media or people will tell themselves, God gives and he takes. Your loved one is in the garden in heaven. All those kind of talk. It's not godly. It's not from God. There's nowhere in the Bible that that's written. God will not give you something and take it away to cause you to hurt. What kind of lesson is He trying to teach you? God will not kill your loved one. That's straight from the pits of hell. So today, brothers and sisters, all you listening to the sound of my voice today, I want you to know and understand that God's perfect will for us is to be healed, whole, and restored. And for us, everyone hearing the sound of my voice to come out of the spirit of grief, from the spirit of heaviness, because the spirit of grief is the spirit of death. You do not want to die from grief, because at the end of it, what will it matter? What will it do? If you continue in grief, will it bring your loved one back? Or has it come to a place where your flesh, your emotions, actually loving the grief and the attention that you're getting from it? But that is not God's will for you. So I hope today that this message has inspired you. I hope that this message has truly, truly inspired you to rise up from the ashes and to put on beauty and to walk in all that God has created you to be. I'd love for you to join me on this journey to restoration. You can tell me your story. I'm here for you. You can link with me on Instagram at Onyeje_I, which is spelled ONYEJE_I. And you can also grab a copy of my book, My Journey to Victory, on Amazon. I have the hard copy and the Kindle version. In that book, I was writing that book as a testimony, just writing down, like a memoir. I kept writing and didn't know that it was going to, turn into a book. But I'm glad that I did. And I know that when you get a copy of that book and when you read it, I have my whole story in there. It will help you and give you the tools, that you need to start your journey of healing. I love you. I've enjoyed my time and take care.